Yes, hello and welcome to episode 6 of
6. Wow.
of Tintin, or if you prefer, Tintin. This is 6 books in already, and this one is The Broken Ear, which has a fantastic cover, which makes you think, "Ooh, he's going on some kind of South American adventure in a kayak." So yeah, it's a sort of jungle-looking adventure. So I remember always being attracted to the cover of this one because it looked right in the middle of the adventure, you know.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite covers, definitely.
It's beautiful, yeah. Yeah, and I didn't think I knew this one as well as the other one. I couldn't recall it as easily as the other ones. Whereas, you know, next week's The Black Island, I could pretty much, from memory, I know what happens in that one. So I'm looking forward to reading that. But this one, I couldn't remember it as well. But as I was reading it, I was saying, "Oh yeah, I remember this. Yeah."
Maybe it's because it's quite a convoluted and complex plot, really.
Yeah, it is. It's a real sort of. He goes from reporter to detective. He's more like Sherlock Holmes in this one than ever. It's a real clue following one where you're like, well, of course it was so and so, or you know, I know. I've suddenly realised I need to talk to, and it's that person. And then he goes to see that person, and they've always disappeared. So it's a very mysterious adventure.
Yes, I kept having to look back and remind myself what was going. So why is he going there now? Oh yeah, that's why. I don't know how I managed to read this as sort of a 9-year-old.
But yeah, what's the background of this one, Mr. Wilson?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, in 1935, Hergé was working harder than he ever had been. He's got this great following now. He's being published in Belgium and he's being published in France. But he's working really hard and he's not really relaxing or taking time off. His creative partner, Chang Chon-ren, who worked with him closely on The Blue Lotus, has been summoned back to China. His mentor and former boss, Abbot Valet, has been sent away from the newspaper. And Hergé's starting to have some depressive episodes, mainly because he's working too hard. He seems to have started writing a new comic strip for this French newspaper around this time, which was the the Valiant Hearts newspaper. And in there, he's writing about the adventures of Josette and Jocko. And Hergé doesn't seem to have been particularly excited about this group of children that he was writing about. But he was keen to do it because he knew it would raise his profile in France for the Tintin adventures. And this French newspaper seems to have been run by some churchmen from France and has said to Hergé that he has to include all of the characters' families and parents and grandparents to make it really wholesome and things. And Hergé just apparently said, "They bored me terribly. These parents who wept all the time as they searched for their children who had gone off in all directions. These characters didn't have the total freedom enjoyed by Tintin." So Hergé is now creating 3 stories a week. And apparently each one took him about 2 days to complete. So essentially he's working 6-day weeks. And then he's also doing the cover for the Petit 20e as well. So throughout 1935, he's getting burnt out. And on a couple of occasions, he goes to visit his former boss, Abbot Valet, in his monastery, where he is out in rural Belgium now, leaving his wife behind him. But then he goes there and he doesn't seem to be able to rest, and then he goes back to do more work, and then he gets burnt out again. And so he sort of goes to and fro from these kind of retreats with his former boss. So it's a bit of this unhappiness really that forms the backdrop to The Broken Ear. And The Broken Ear started to be serialized in the Petit 20e in December 1935. And it continued through to February 1937, when Casterman published it as a black and white book. And it was colorized then, I think, in 1943. But I think it was one of the first books to keep the original artwork. I don't think Hergé redrew this one. He just colored it.
Yeah, and it's not changed much as well. I think there were a few revisions, but otherwise It's pretty much the same book, and it does follow on in terms of style from the Blue Lotus, because you can see generally Tintin and the Thompsons are drawn in the same slightly squatter way than they ended up being, a bit more maybe taller and thinner, I don't know, but in these versions you can sort of tell when you know Tintin really well, you can tell the difference between early Tintin and later Tintin. But it's more like the classic style now, and I read somewhere that the backgrounds were done in something of a hurry. So some of the washes were not done to the detail Hergé would have liked.
I think that's probably probably underestimating it, because just looking at just page 48 here, the jungle scenes, it kind of starts off with these beautiful sort of jungle backdrops, but then progressively as you go from page to page, the detail of the bushes and the trees kind of gradually disappear until you get to page, I think it's about page 52, where like every backdrop is just plain green. And so obviously he's just overworked entirely at this stage. So.
That's it, I think. And he was not happy with the final quality of a few of the panels, I think. You wouldn't necessarily know. I've never noticed before until, you know, when you know, and you're like, oh yeah, it sort of, it goes a little bit abstract at various points. That's not to say the detail in the book isn't brilliant, because it is, as usual. There aren't any big panels in this book. This is the first one that hasn't had any big oversized panels that more than just that.
That's right. When I finished the book, I thought, that's right, there isn't any panels in it, and there aren't any Thompsons in it either.
The Thompsons are in it.
Are they? Did I miss them?
Yeah, they are in it, but very briefly. When he very first goes,
gosh,
but right at the beginning, and I think that's it. And actually, now you mention it, I thought they were in the book a lot more, but they weren't. They just appear at the beginning.
When can you miss it? I mean, it kind of feels like Hergé maybe was planning to put them in, but then forgot or something.
I wonder if it's a token thing. When he started off the story, he's like, I'll put the Thompsons in because people like the Thompsons. But then as it went on, he thought they can't really be in it. I mean, I can't see any room for the Thompsons, because you've kind of got the Thompsons' replacement is that foolish guy who keeps trying to blow them up.
Oh yeah, Diaz. Yeah,
Diaz, and he just keeps saying, what is it? He keeps saying, he has a catchphrase. It's always back to square one.
That is very Looney Tunes, isn't it? It's really cartoonish.
Yeah, he'd almost have a like diddle-diddle, diddle-diddle, and he's got these comedy bombs. And I think Hergé was slightly mocked for that by a few critics, saying that it was a comedy villains. But I'm like, it is a cartoon. You're allowed to have comedy villains in it with comedy bombs. But this is, interestingly for me, this book, the first book where I learned that you can't. And every time I watch a movie now, I remember that, and it's this book that you can't just put dynamite against a wall. You have to bury it. And that's how I learned that fact. So every time I watch a film now that's got dynamite in it, I'm like, do you know, you've got to bury dynamite, otherwise it just blows up and doesn't explode anything.
Yes, that was very educational of Hergé to write in so much detail about the effects of dynamite against a wall. I don't know who he was really aiming at, his kind of young charges.
I wonder if it's true or just fit the plot. But you know, in all the times I've tried to blow up people with dynamite, I've never succeeded. So you know, I could have read this book a bit more carefully. But I love the fact that Diaz is the idiot character, you know, and right to the point where it's a running gag. It's almost like Michael Palin in Fish Called Wanda, where he's trying to kill the old lady and he just kills a dog each time. And I think Diaz, like every time he tries to blow someone up, he messes it up. Like he changes his watch because the clock's wrong in the town square, and it just goes on and on and on. Eventually just blows himself up, and that's the end of Diaz.
Yeah, I like this book that Hergé does get quite a lot of slapstick in, and there's this professor character as well on page 6 who's again feels like a prototype for calculus, in that he sort of takes out his walking stick thinking it's his umbrella, and then starts speaking to a parrot as if it was a gentleman on the street.
He does. He's just a slightly eccentric man. He looks like my old doctor, actually. I had a doctor who looked exactly like that, like a classic gentleman country doctor. But yeah, there's some good villains in this as well.
Yeah.
And there's some good, just very good humor, because I love the sequence with the two henchmen on the boat where they keep thinking, because of well, you've got some recall from previous books because Tintin is always disguising himself. So you have this running joke in the books, throughout the books, that Tintin disguises himself. And then these two guys, they're onto it, and they're like, that's Tintin. That fat guy. Oh no, that's Tintin, the old man with the beard. Then they're like, oh my God, the place is full of Tintins.
Yes, and that's the slightly cringy bit as well, where it turns out that Tintin isn't any of these people, but he's actually the kind of black waiter. He's kind of like blacked up like Al Jolson.
Oh my God, I mean, I'm not just being clutching my pearls here, but I was quite shocked by that bit, because I showed it to Vicky and I went, oh God, look, it hasn't quite disappeared, the Tintin in the Congo thing. There's a guy there who's a clear stereotype, and then it turns out that Tintin's wearing blackface, and it's like, okay. But in the 30s, well, it was offensive in the 30s, I imagine, but obviously the publishers thought it was acceptable. But yeah, that was quite a shock.
Yeah, it was, and I did enjoy. Is it Ramon and Alonso, the two baddies? Because there's this thing that Ramon is the knife thrower, and the thing is that he always throws too far to the right. So Alonso is constantly trying to get him. Just throw it a bit to the left, and you'll be fine. And
yeah, I love those two, because they're such stereotypes, but they are funny. I mean, it's about as offensive as Manuel in Fawlty Towers. It's, you know what I mean? It is a stereotype.
It's kind of caricature more than a sort of offensive
caricature. Yeah, but I did read that one of the names, I think it's actually later with one of the characters, his name actually originally meant penis in Spanish, so they had to change it. I think it's the South American lad that he meets. Yeah, here we go. Caraco. He was originally called Carajo with a J, which apparently is Spanish colloquial for penis.
Right, this is the problem of Hergé becoming a megastar across the world and having to watch his P's and Q's now.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, it just this one's very fun. It integrates humor and story. Like, you've got the bit where everyone's, Tintin for the fourth time, as he points out, is about to get shot. And every time Tintin is lined up to get shot by a firing squad, you always think, well, either the guns are going to misfire, or they're firing blanks, or something will fall from the sky, or basically Tintin's not going to die. So they have that sort of replacement of the dictators that keeps going on, and everyone's celebrating that they've gone, oh no, he's back.
Yeah, I mean, but as well as the cartoon violence, there's also, it's very dark. In fact, four main characters in this book die. I think the artist at the start, who's been murdered, he's been creating these fake fetishes. And then Diaz blows himself up, and then Alonso and Ramon, they drown, and then like devils carry them away.
Yeah, which when I was a kid, I always thought that was funny, because I think when you're a kid, I've watched a lot of Tom and Jerry cartoons, so I was quite familiar with the devil and the angel. So I knew if you had an angel on your shoulder, it was telling you to do good things, but the devil would like lead you away. So I kind of saw it as that, the devil's pricking at them with their hooks and forks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an unusual thing, and I don't think Hergé ever did that again.
Well, I think that it got a lot more kind of family friendly later on. The publishers of the Valiant Hearts children's magazine in France, I think, were particularly upset that Hergé could kill off four of his characters, and that's one of the reasons for this Jacques Zette and Jocko departure in that magazine, I think.
I've never read Jacques Zette and Jocko, but I would actually read that now. Once we finished the Tintin books, I would actually be quite happy to start reading them, because it's more Hergé, and you're not going to get any more Hergé. So I might as well get into them. Never did, but I will. I didn't realize they were written at the same time. Obviously, I did before we started doing these, but I remember seeing them in the bookshop in the 90s and going, "Oh, more Hergé." But yeah, they're lost. Is it like a lost pair of siblings and their monkey?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I've not read them. I started to read them in French over Christmas at my sister-in-law's house, and didn't get very far with my very bad high school French.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, also, I don't know if the stories are it's a totally different vibe, isn't it? Whereas Tintin, you've got the detective aspect of it, which is great.
Well, I mean, I was going to say this is a genre piece, really, this book, but I can't work out if it's along the lines of the Maltese Falcon kind of Agatha Christie murder mystery, or is it more a South American Banana Republic kind of caper?
You know, it reminded me of Bananas,
Yeah.
the Woody Allen film, where he gets involved, especially when he meets Alcazar, who's a recurring character from this point on, General Alcazar, who becomes friendly with Tintin sort of by accident because Tintin's going to get shot. And then Alcazar comes back into power and the shooters are all like, hooray, General Alcazar. And then the other guy goes, no, he's just been overthrown again. Oh, hooray, the other guy then. And while Tintin is drunk, they start forcing alcohol down, and he gets drunk. Alcazar and his followers think that Tintin has been showing drunken support for Alcazar in the face of a firing squad, but actually Tintin has no idea what's going on, and that's how he becomes friends with General Alcazar, which is really funny.
It's a strange friendship and a strange ally to have, Alcazar, because Alcazar is, I mean, totally a loose cannon. I mean, they play each other at chess, and Tintin wins, and Alcazar kind of starts shooting the room up, and
he's like,
Tintin thinks, so he says, it's all right, it's just fake bullets, but
I always do this to my friends.
yeah.
And Tintin's like, okay. But, you know, a word for poor Snowy in this book as well. He gets his tail is just put through the ringer. He gets shot. His tail gets shot. It gets stabbed with a dart. It gets hit by lightning. There's one point where he goes over a waterfall and Tintin has to hold Snowy by the tail. I just felt so sorry for Snowy because my doggy's got a little stumpy tail too. And the thought of him hurting his tail is just heartbreaking.
I mean, in one sense, Hergé is trying to show the ridiculousness of this sort of conflict between General Tapioca and General Alcazar, between this, is it Nuevo Rico and San Theodorus, which apparently were supposed to be modeled on Bolivia and Paraguay, that were having this, they had a sort of 4-year conflict, and about 100,000 people had lost their lives. And there was really this real war of the Gran Chaco, which I think is been rechristened Gran Chapo in the broken ear. But there's that kind of Hergé trying to kind of show up that for what it is, this like ridiculous thing, but also being very critical of petroleum oil companies from Britain and America that were really just trying to play the two sides off against each other to just get the oil fields, and lots of criticism for America and Britain there.
Yeah, I think San Theodore and what's the other place called? They were
Nuevo Rico,
yeah, they were fictional. They were definitely the first, but I don't know if they were the only fictional places Hergé created for Tintin, because every other book I think has got a real places in it.
Well, I think that he got into so much trouble in The Broken Ear for portraying the Chinese-Japanese conflict that he's kind of decided that he's going to be a bit more, these are kind of thinly veiled references, but you know, he's just trying to avoid that kind of fallout this time.
This, and I've said this a lot, but this really reminded me of an Indiana Jones adventure, this one, to the point where there are panels in it where I'm like, well, that Spielberg used this inadvertently, or, you know, advertently, is that a word? Things like this. That is a shot they used in the last fight. At the beginning when he's on his horse and he pulls up and there's a train in the background, but then it's probably from every Western ever. And then the other one was this brilliant sort of checkpoint scene here where he goes through a checkpoint. And again, it reminded me of Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, where he goes through with his dad, you know, on the sidecar, motorcycle sidecar. So it sort of belongs to that espionage, political espionage, you know, fighting the bad guys in certain countries vibe that Indiana Jones has as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's very cinematic, which makes it all the more disappointing that some of the panels and some of the pages have obviously been rushed, and he's not gone to any trouble to do these bigger panels, which is probably again because of a lack of time. That seems a real shame. Although he does seem to have put a good deal of research into it, because this is something that his friend Chang was very much encouraging him to do his research properly. And this seems to have been the first adventure that he started, at least, to plot a bit out. He has a notebook now that I think he's starting to plot out some of the dialogue and some of the stuff in there. And I think the first scene in the museum is actually from a real Brussels museum, the Royal Museums of Art and History, that Hergé visits, and actually there the fetish, the broken-eared fetish, is a real exhibit in that museum from Peru.
Yeah, and they didn't they have they staged a real gallery exhibition with the fetish in it, and true to life, it actually got nicked. And I think it got stolen, and the thief said, if you return, I will return it if you turn up at the gallery with a newspaper under your right arm. And Hergé turned up with a newspaper under his left arm, and the thief never appeared. I think Hergé always wondered if that guy would have ever brought but it was a replica anyway. But that's bizarre.
That's a lovely story. I mean, you never know now with Hergé, because he's shown. He's obviously in marketing as well, so he's notorious for doing these sort of staged events to promote the books as well.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it might be a bit of fun.
Yeah, I was wondering where the inspiration was from, because on the one hand, I remember the Sherlock Holmes story, The Six Napoleons, where this black, I think it's a black pearl that's hidden inside these plaster casts of Napoleon bust, and they're fakes, and they sort of have to go around London looking for these to find out where the real pearl is hidden. But also, I think, Maltese Falcon-esque.
I was just going to say Maltese Falcon. Is this the first Hergé book that's got a MacGuffin in it?
Oh yes, that's right, the MacGuffin. Yeah.
A MacGuffin is something Hitchcock invented. I think he coined the term as it's the thing everyone's after in a movie, and basically it's a plot device. And the broken ear is a plot device because everyone's after it.
And also there's the parrot witnesses the murder, and that's got to be from so many other different stories as well. I couldn't work out what he'd got his inspiration from, but there must be hundreds of movies and books where that happens.
Yeah, it's a very funny. I love the fact that the parrot is the sort of first MacGuffin. Get the parrot and you'll find out who the murderer was. And then it's get the broken ear fetish and you'll discover where the diamond is. But yeah, it's got that very Hitchcockian, and I think Hergé was very influenced by Hitchcock, and he actually puts himself in a cameo in the second panel. Apparently that's Hergé.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I see it. Yeah.
That was, he put himself in there because he wanted to do a Hitchcock cameo. And also, this is the first, I think, Tintin book where you see Tintin's house, where he lives for the rest of the series.
Oh yes, where he does his Pilates, and and Snowy's doing his Pilates as well.
Yeah, 26 Labrador Road. That's where Tintin lives.
Okay, nice.
And and I think in the Spielberg movie, they recreate that flat that he lives in. And I do love the parrot. The fact that all he says is great he gets at everybody and just gets everyone into so much trouble.
There is a lot going on in there again. I mean, very much like the Blue Lotus, but probably even more so. And for me, it almost feels like two books, that there's this the mystery of the fetish and things, and then there's this South American Banana Republic thing where he becomes a corporal and things. And I'm not sure how the two things sit together for me, but there's certainly a lot going on. I mean, Hergé himself says that of this book that I didn't know anymore how to extricate myself. The story about Jules, who was the killer, who was the thief, why, how, I couldn't figure it out anymore. And so it seems like some of the earlier books, he's not quite plotted himself through to the finishing page.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, if you compare, either side of Blue Lotus, you've got Broken Ear, and then you've got Cigars of the Pharaoh. And Cigars of the Pharaoh, now, when you read Broken Ear, you realize how Cigars of the Pharaoh is sketchy. Like, you read Cigars of the Pharaoh, you think this is great, it's very fun, it looks beautiful, it's got great characters, but it's very loose. it's sort of got that whodunit Alfred Agatha Christie vibe to it. And then Blue Lotus was so focused and sort of strong and bold as a statement. Then this comes along after the Blue Lotus, and it's like, this is kind of like what Cigars of the Pharaoh would have been if he'd been a better storyteller before Blue Lotus. So, or he got more of a handle on the character.
Yeah, and equally, this book seems to inform the latter books as well, because you get the feeling that he's rushing this, and there are things that he's not happy with. But you see some of the motifs and some of the subplots turn up in later books. So the firing squad and Tintin being saved from the firing squad reappears in Tintin and the Picaros. There's the fireball that comes into the room, which is obviously 7 crystal balls. The car crash in the ravine, which is the calculus affair, and the man-eating parrot is seen again in the Castafiore emeralds. So he kind of takes a lot of the good stuff out of this book and sprinkles it into the later books, maybe just because he didn't feel as though he did the best job of it here.
That's true. I suppose it's like, if you think about Hitchcock, it's kind of like North by Northwest. A lot of people think that's like a sort of best of Hitchcock. I mean, it's one of his best films, obviously, but you've got the man that no one believes on the run, and the mistaken identity. You've got the villain, the villain's lair, the chase. It's all the best of Hitchcock that he's kind of taken from a lot of his earlier films and put in the 39 Steps, and all this kind of things, put it in there. And Broken Ear, maybe he does that with Broken Ear. He starts to go, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to pull this out and because writers, they say writers only have half a dozen stories. And I think later on he must have said, you know what? I'm going to bring back Alcazar because that'll be a good. But also recurring characters are satisfying, aren't they? You're like, oh, I know that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, shall we award this 1 to 7 crystal balls? What do you think this week?
I'm going to give this one. I'm going to give this one a strong 5. I think, because I think he's up to speed, Hergé, and it's not perfect Tintin book. We've yet to find the perfect Tintin book. I think Blue Lotus comes close, but Broken Ear, I think it is up there, and it is better than some of the early ones. Did we give Cigars 4 or 5? I can't remember.
Yes, I think so.
And we might have given it 4 and 5, actually. I think we did different scores. But yeah, I'm going to give this one a 5 because I think it's very rarely dips below really entertaining.
I think I'm going to be a little more stingy. I just thought that in this one, some of the artwork was a little bit sketchy and certainly not the quality of the Blue Lotus. There are not much of the Thompsons, no large panel artwork. And it feels it's a bit disjointed. There are these 2 stories and just how well they come together, the South American Banana Republic thing and the main mystery. So I'm going to give it a 4. I think the ambition is certainly there, but the execution isn't there, which is a bit frustrating because the story could be it is very strong. And it just feels that with a bit more time and love and care and attention, it could have been a much better book.
I do agree that I enjoyed it so much as it rattled along. It reminded me of almost like sometimes a spaghetti western or a Bogart film.
Yeah, these I was just looking at this frame actually, which is lovely and really calls back to kind of the old western movies as well.
It does, actually. Vicky and I are currently working our way through the Man with the No Name trilogy. We watched for a few dollars more yesterday, which is it's so good. Oh my God, they're such good films. And next week, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which probably the best one. But yeah, it did remind me of that, and a sort of Banana Republic comedy, political comedy, like something like Bananas.
And next week we have another book with a boat on the cover. One of your favorites, I believe.
It is, and I think it's the first one I read, so I'll always have a soft spot for it. And it's set in Scotland, so first time.
Yeah, I used to live on the Black Island, not the Black Island, but the Black Isle, close enough.
You did, didn't you? And it's just, I remember it being very memorable, beautifully drawn, and it's a bit like the 39 Steps. It's got that, I think at one point Tintin jumps off a train off a viaduct. So it's got that kind of vibe to it. I just remember it being very funny. It's got a big gorilla in it.
And Tintin dressing up in national dress, which is always fun.
Which is now mandatory in Scotland.
Absolutely.
You have to be, as soon as everyone comes out of lockdown, they're going to be walking around with a tam o' shanter and a kilt.
I certainly intend to be.
Good. In fact, I'm going to take you up on that. I want to see you recreating scenes
Next week
in Edinburgh.
And on that bombshell, shall we say goodbye?
Yes, thanks everyone for continuing to watch. Thanks for your nice comments. We love doing it, so we'll keep doing it until we finish.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
What you wished, laddie.